This is Bob Ambrogi, and we are here to get a demonstration, get some background on a new integration between LawVu and ClauseBase. You'll find out all about it in the next hour or so. And here to tell us all about it are our two guests, Senna Menace, who's co-founder of ClauseBase, and Ali Meredith, Director of Product Partnerships at LawVu. Hello to both of you.
Hi,
Hi.
Bob. Thanks for having us.
Senna, you and I have recorded a couple of videos here talking about your product, but this integration is something new. And before we get to talking about that, why don't I let each of you tell me a little bit about your companies and what you do for the benefit of people who may not be familiar with you. So I don't know, Ali, you want to kick it off? Kind of just tell us a little bit about LawVu and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Bob, and lovely to be here. So I'm Ali. I'm Director of Product Partnerships at LawVu, and LawVu is a workspace for in-house legal teams. So we basically help in-house legal teams globally with a range of things, matters, contract management, spend management. But for the purposes of this demo and this integration, we'll be focusing on the contract management part of our platform.
And Senna, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm one of the co-founders of ClauseBase. We've built a drafting and reviewing toolbox that lives inside Microsoft Word and that helps lawyers with all of the different aspects of drafting and reviewing legal documents. So think, extracting clauses from precedent documents, generating first drafts, proofreading, comparison, all those different things.
All right. And, I guess just to expand a little bit for both of you, I mean, what are kind of the benefits that you see your technology, your platforms giving to the legal customers that you serve? Again, I want to start on LawVu, Ali.
Yeah, well, I guess from our perspective, most of our customers began to be interested in contract review probably a couple of years ago is when it really started to get big. And that demand is just growing. And for obvious reasons, right? A lot of customers spend a long time on contract review, some more than others, depending on the nature of their business. And we have a really good way to tackle your own templates, so contracts that come from templates that you generate. But with AI, there's far more ability to tackle contracts from third-party templates, so contracts that you receive that you need to review, and everyone is interested in that right now. And so a very large portion of our customer base is looking at how they can tackle that problem, which is why we stumbled across ClauseBase.
And LawVu is already has a whole sort of contract lifecycle management system built into it, right? And a repository for a legal department's documents. So a lot of that stuff is all there already. Those pieces are all there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and this partnership works really nicely because whereas ClauseBase is really focused on that contract review part, we wrap around that. So we have I guess, the workflow management from upload of that document. We manage it all the way through to signing. And then post-signing, we manage the post-execution, obligation tracking, all that part, the data reporting, so you can get an idea of what's going on in your contracts. So yeah, we have that functionality to sort of manage the whole life cycle for a contract.
And Senna, back to that value question, I guess, back to you. Talk about it from ClauseBase's perspective.
Yeah, so we offer a very broad toolbox that assists lawyers with a range of different challenges. And we also find that different lawyers, different legal teams face different challenges. Like, for example, some legal teams don't work on a lot of their own paper and then are instead forced to work on third-party paper most of the time, or vice versa. And as a result, they need a sort of a different configuration of tools, and we can provide a tailored configuration of tools because we have such a broad toolbox. But like Ali already said, our focus has always been on that sort of pre-execution, the work that you do inside Microsoft Word. That's always been our focus, and so we play very nicely with documents within Word. But what we also realize, of course, is that there's this sort of sea of knowledge that is very relevant and very useful to kind of pull into the work that you're doing within Word. Things like comparison against previous contracts. What did we allow on this and this and this topic in the past? And that kind of thing. Comparing entire suites of annexes with the main agreement and kind of trying to find useful information from that. Maybe things like how documents may conflict with each other, all of those different things. And that's something where LawVu really fills a really nice sort of gap in our offering, in the sense that LawVu already has that legal drafting brain, essentially. And with this integration, that allows ClauseBase to tap into that and just offer a much improved experience for legal teams.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Shall we kind of dive into show and tell here and start the demo, or was there anything else you wanted to say kind of by way of background before we do that?
Let's dive in. I will share my screen. Right. So this is the LawVu business portal. And to Senna's point, LawVu is sort of that bigger repository. So we have a whole bunch of information stored within LawVu that your legal team, data that your legal team would create or the wider business would create in relation to legal matters. And it all lives within LawVu. But this is our business-facing portal. So think if you're in an organization and you want your sales team to be able to very easily submit through a contract for your review, or to ask a question or get some help about something, this is where that salesperson would land. And so for today, we're just going to land on the contract review button. Imagine that you have this new contract that you need review. You would come in here and you would create this new object that's going to become that contract. So I can give it a name. Let's just call it, I think, Highlands MSA. I could enter in a background around it if I wanted to. And all this stuff is very configurable and customizable for each of our customers. So you can really choose what data you're collecting when you create this new contract that's coming in. I could give it a region. So let's just do that. And then I can go ahead and attach that contract file. So as that document uploads, and as I click next, you can see that it's assigned into the intake queue already. So as soon as this contract's created, it's going to land with the legal team. And it's going to land in their intake queue so they can triage it, assign it out to the right lawyer on their team. And so I can click create, and that will spin up that new matter with the contract attached. And then really from the perspective of the salesperson or the person in the wider business who's putting this request in, their work is done. So they can come in here and they can review what the sort of their outstanding requests. But basically they're at a point where that contract's created. They might want to check in on how it's going, but we'll switch over to the perspective of an in-house legal user. So switching over, if I just refresh my screen, we have landed in LawVu.
So what the legal team is seeing is different than what the customer, or so-called, the business person is seeing, right? They have a different interface.
Absolutely, yeah. We have a different interface. So the business portal, which is that sort of the portal that faces out to the wider business, is customizable to help them submit requests very easily and to help the legal team get the information they need. And then what the legal team sees is more of that workspace. So LawVu is the place where our lawyers spend their day if they're not in Outlook or Word. And it's the place where they come to manage everything. So we've landed on the hub. You get an overview of what you have going on. You can favorite different contracts that you have, maybe that you're working on at that point, or matters. You get your intake. You have actions that might need to be completed, and the whole team is in LawVu. So this is sort of like that joint central source of truth. So everything you're working on is in here. You're all going to have access and visibility over everything that you're doing, and you've got that visibility over what's going on and who's working on what, so you can easily hand stuff off between the team. So I'm going to jump into the matters in the intake queue, and we'll see that this contract request will have landed in here. And you can see it there, so I can click in and open it. I've changed to my legal user, so I can choose to join this matter. And then when I open up that contract and click in, you'll see we've got the contract document itself stored here. So we've got that first version, and then we've got a whole lot of information as well that you might want attached. Like we could attach statement of works or amendments. We track key dates once it goes into execution. And you can see up here we have the life cycle. So we're currently in draft, but we'll work this all the way through to execute it and then post-execution. But where ClauseBuddy comes in is that we have this very easy ability from within LawVu to connect into both Outlook and Word. And so from here, I can very easily just click edit, and that's going to open up in Word that document where we can switch over to ClauseBuddy's functionality to review it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll share my screen then.
Okay.
There we go. So as
Got it.
Ali was already saying, you can indeed just edit that Word document directly from LawVu. We have a couple of interesting options that are then available to us from within ClauseBuddy. The assumption here is that we need to do a little bit of fine tuning and a little bit of tweaking and refining this document. And ClauseBuddy offers a couple of different modules to assist with that exact exercise. One of the first things that we can take a quick look at is finding useful clauses. Let's say that we need to augment this document a little bit more. What we can do is we can essentially search through our drafting history. So we have this huge repository of documents, courtesy of LawVu, naturally, where we can just search through in the style of, I remember drafting this one provision a while ago, or, I'm interested in learning how exactly we dealt with that issue back when we did this contract or that contract. We can search for that here in this clauses overview. Again, the idea is that you have this sort of repository within ClauseBuddy. You can upload those documents manually, but of course, you can also just fetch them from LawVu, where you can then basically, for example, from your contracts overview, you can pull in those documents, and those will then act as your legal drafting brain from which you can extract certain clauses. So we could do something along the lines of, let's say that we search for a liability. I even misspelled this, but that's not a problem. A liability limitation clause. Naturally, we are going to get quite a few results if indeed we are working with a large data set, but that's not a problem. We can filter that down based on the metadata that are being extracted from these documents that we're pulling in. So for example, we could say we're drafting a master services agreement here. So we'll search for document type master services agreement. And then maybe we'll also do something like author. Let's say that we want to go for this person's clauses particularly. And then we could even fine tune those results further by asking just a plain English question along the lines of, only provide clauses with a liability limitation cap. And every time you're seeing that result go down, those number of results go down until suddenly we are left with this one individual clause that fits our needs. If we need to make any changes on the spot, we can do that with the help of the AI redrafting option here. So we could make this a little bit more favorable to one party, make it shorter. We could even fill out some sort of custom instruction. But if we're happy with this as is, we can also just make a little bit of space and insert it directly, in which case the AI will kind of align the clause with the styling present in the document. This is something that we like to call chameleon clauses because they adapt to their environment, much like a chameleon does. So that's already one example of where
Can I
LawVu
ask you a
can
quick question on that, Senna? Just
Of course.
when you initially then went in to do that search, did you have to pre-configure that to be searching LawVu? What's involved in setting up LawVu to be sort of the repository that you're searching there?
Yeah. So really, this is something that you would do at the outset. You would just assign or you would identify the different folders within LawVu that you want to fetch these documents from. But in the average course of business, like when I'm in the use case that we're describing, right? When I'm working on this matter and I'm reviewing this document and I'm going through my Drufflant, I would not have to manually again sort of fetch those documents. This is done automatically then.
So once it's done, and you don't have to think about it the next time.
So that's in a nutshell a sort of a first way in which LawVu can really come in and kind of provide this huge repository of drafting knowledge. Another way that it can do that is in the process of reviewing documents. And there's a couple of different methods that ClauseBuddy can help with the review of documents. The first one is the doc chat, which is as the name suggests, really just an interface that allows you to chat with one or more documents. So by default, we're obviously going to be able to chat with our current document, but again, we can upload or pull in documents on the spot from LawVu as we wish. So we could say something along the lines of, we're working on this MSA, and maybe we want to pull in a statement of work that's sort of related to this MSA. What we can then ask is something along the lines of, are there any conflicts between the SOW and the MSA? Just to kind of make sure, is this something is there like an alert that should be going off for me? Is there anything that I should be looking into? This is something that obviously as a human would be pretty difficult to find, but we can clearly get an overview here of the conflicts that are being found, and we can also naturally see where those pop up. So we've got this sort of source citation that we can always fall back on to kind of see, okay, is this really an issue yet? That's sort of need for on the spot, ad hoc kind of questions that you need to ask, information that needs to be surfaced. What we can also do is we can leverage this on a more sort of a high level basis or a more structured basis, where essentially we can provide a number of different questions at the same time from a number of different documents, provide a general overview in a table format. And again, here, right, in the same manner, we can fetch documents that we want to include here. We can fetch these from LawVu. So what I will do is I'll again go into our overview of this MSA document, and I'll pull in a couple of annexes. Imagine right now, right, that we are working in finalization of a suite of documents, a main agreement, and several different annexes. And we're just kind of performing an on the spot check, or maybe we're pulling together a report on all of the different topics that are being covered that maybe we can show to management, if indeed there is like a typical standardized overview of items that need to be reported on. We do see that from time to time with legal teams that deal with high value, high risk contracts. So the idea is that you first upload your documents, then you ask the questions that you want to ask on all of these different documents. You can create questions on the spot of any different type and variety, and any kind of overview or any kind of specific answer that you want. You can kind of clarify that here. Like we could ask a text question. But what's even more interesting is we can also have pre-configured questions. So we could ask, if we are indeed pulling together these reports on a regular basis, we could have the sort of the same overview of questions that are being asked in this report. This, for example, is a good example of how that report can be structured. So step 1, we upload our documents. Step 2, we choose our questions. And step 3, we run those questions on the documents. And then what we get, admittedly, this is a fairly limited overview, but what we get here is, we get a very good overview of the key issues that we're trying to extract, and the sort of inconsistencies or maybe augmentations of one to the other that are being pulled in here, which we can then again, of course, export either to Word or to Excel if indeed we are in the process of setting up a report that needs to be shown to management. Now, I want to do a quick perspective switch for the final kind of review option that we allow, which is reviewing with the help of a playbook, i.e. you are not working on your own paper in this situation. You're working on third-party paper, and maybe you need to kind of have a first check to see to what extent this document does or does not comply with your own policy as a company, right? That's typically what a playbook contains. So an overview of all of the different rules, requirements that you have on the topic of a specific type of document. We've got a bunch of different playbooks here. Let's go with the MSA one. And there you can see this is essentially our overview of requirements, rules, checks in the checklists if you will, that we have when it comes to and what we're doing now is we're just going to, in step 3, run that playbook on this document. And then what the AI provides us is a kind of red flag, green flag analysis of where the document does or does not comply with our predetermined rules. And we can see that here, right? For example, the agreement must specify German law as the governing law. And what it actually finds is that, and we can again see that here because it is linked to, the source is cited, what we actually find is that it is laws of Belgium, not German law. And so what we could do here is we could first of all rewrite the selected text, have the AI perform those changes automatically. This is obviously going to be a fairly minor change because it's literally just changing the word Belgium to Germany. But you can imagine that for more complex clauses, for more detailed requirements, we could have entire paragraphs be changed, entire scopes of a document based on one of these rewrites. What we can also do here, what we don't actually have pictured, is that we can pull in clauses from your library and basically run those against the clauses in the third-party document and see how we can kind of merge the two together. But that's a little bit more of an advanced functionality. So yeah, that's in a nutshell where the sort of reviewing comes into play, where the specific aim is running a playbook against third-party document, where the specific aim is redrafting a document based on your own requirements, based on your negotiation position. Now, this idea of redrafting a document doesn't necessarily have to, be focused specifically on this reviewing module. So it could very well be that you're just kind of like scrolling through this document and you find a specific provision that you want to change. Maybe you're not in the process of running a playbook. Maybe you're even kind of stepping outside of the playbook for a little bit. But that's not a problem. You can run that rewrite as we just saw for the governing law. You can also run that on a document itself. So let's say that we want to rewrite this termination clause. We can just go into here and just provide a quick prompt. Again, here we have the ability to just fill out a short prompt and have that be that. But again, we have another touch point with LawVu here where we can pull in documents if indeed there are useful documents related to this matter that could inform how the redraft needs to happen. Maybe I want to include some kind of a term sheet or other and just say like, okay, make sure that this clause is changed and brought into line with whatever we agreed here, or maybe we just need to match the style a little bit. Anything along those lines we can do. But for now, let's keep it simple. Let's say that we just need to include an option to terminate the agreement for solvency or material breach or something along those lines. And again, what you're noticing here probably is that we always work with this sort of V1, V2, and V3, etc. versions. We see this as a kind of workbench. So typically when the AI provides its initial response, that may not be the perfect response right away for what you need, or maybe you want to iterate a little bit on that and you want to kind of play a little bit of a ping pong game with the AI. That's something that you can do here through the help of that V1 and V2, and you can go back to any version at any point in time if you're not 100% happy with the final result and you said, well, the previous result was a little bit better. And you can even mix and match elements from different versions if you want. But then ultimately, the end result, again, is going to be just inserting that clause either directly or in track changes, as I'm doing now, where, of course, then again, sort of layout awareness, as we like to call it, those chameleon clauses come into play again, because ClauseBuddy can automatically adjust the numbering and apply the correct styling to this new paragraph as well on this. And then basically, in a sort of final stage, right, we've looked at functionalities from each individual module that you're seeing here. By the way, this is not the full breadth of what ClauseBuddy has to offer, but these are the things that we wanted to cover today. The final module that you're seeing here is the finalize module. So the idea here being that if you need to have, if you're ready to send out a document, to a colleague, to a counterparty, to a client, you can just run a quick proofreading check, and there the AI will go through typical issues that may pop up in documents such as these, where, for example, you may have some missing definitions for capitalized terms, you may have some unused definitions, some unused capitalized terms. So the idea being that you're writing this word with a lowercase letter when in reality you should be writing it with an uppercase letter, numbering and things like that. Maybe date notation, all of those different things. We can just kind of check the document for, see if there's any issues, and if we're ready, then we can just send that out. And then naturally, these documents immediately make their way back to LawVu, where the sort of post-execution process can be handled, which I think is something that Ali can take over from me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I turn it back to Ali. I just want to say that for anybody watching this, we do have a separate ClauseBase video that we recorded that does have more of the features, as Senan just alluded to, covered in it, and you can always search for that. But it doesn't talk about the LawVu integration at all, which is something new. So just a note.
Wonderful. Okay, so we've gone through that workflow in Word through ClauseBuddy, but from within Word, LawVu has a Word plugin, right? So it becomes very easy to sort of switch between the two Word plugins and to very easily save it back into that location in LawVu. We'll automatically find the location that you were most recently in or that you opened the document from. And you can just save it back in as the latest version. So you've got that agreement, you might have made some changes to it, and you can just save it straight back in. So you're using LawVu as that sort of repository, and your team is very easily able to update it and add the latest version. So you're working from that one place.
And there are versions getting saved there?
There are versions. So we do version control very well. So basically, we saw earlier when we updated that first version that came through from the business user or the salesperson, we had a version 1. We then open it in Word, and then we're saving this back as a version 2. So yeah, so version control works sort of seamlessly between LawVu and ClauseBuddy, and it helps you mean that LawVu builds that sort of central source of truth, and you've got that collection, and you've got all that shared knowledge in here, so you can really see what's happened on any particular contract. So basically, I guess from a review point, we'd expect you to do all of that review in Word. And so from within Word, you'd be using ClauseBuddy to do all of the review, all of the editing and the markup to your contract. But as soon as you get back into LawVu, you can sort of kick off the rest of that process. So currently we're in draft. We could very easily move it through to approvals, and we have a way within LawVu to set up approvals in advance. So as soon as this contract's ready for approval it could be from the legal team, or it could be from the procurement team or the finance team, you can add those people to the contract, kick off that approvals process, and they're going to get a notification, and they're going to have to give it their seal of approval before it proceeds to signing. From approvals, we can move it through then to signing and executed, and we integrate with all the major e-signature providers, and so you can seamlessly send it out to DocuSign, so you can manage that sort of signing process. And then once it's signed, it's going to fall back into LawVu as just that executed version of the contract, and you can use LawVu to track a lot of your reporting. So from within here, you get a view of your contracts, you can get a view of the dates, so you've got this sort of calendar view of the dates that they're going to expire, or any other key dates on that contract that you might want to track, like sort of milestones in the contract or stuff that the team needs to be aware of. You can have the grid view to get a really good view into what's in the contracts and an overview of what's there. And this is all entirely configurable, so you could pull in fields as you needed if you wanted to surface up different data points that you'd captured during that process. I'm going to switch over to the reporting. We have
just real quick on the kind of workflow there. I mean, in the real world, probably that negotiation step that you kind of jumped over might have lasted a little bit longer. I mean, probably, you would have had to have taken the changes you've just made and send them off to a counterparty and get them to look at them and come back again. So just, just acknowledging we're just doing a quick demo here, but there might be more to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah. In the real world context, you might have several iterations of that review phase back and forward. And you can handle that within LawVu, so you just continually update the versions as you're going, as you're getting them back. And you could use ClauseBuddy for every iteration of that too. So every time you're getting that version back from the counterparty, you could just open it up and review. So our reporting, and this is something that we're particularly proud of, it's really useful for tracking sort of post-execution what you've got in LawVu, so that just high-level view of how many contracts do I have in the system, but also tracking the value of them, the types of contracts and where they're sitting in the life cycle, but also, I guess, tracking that turnaround time, because when customers come to us and say third-party contract review is a real issue for us, it's a real pain point, our question is always, well, what is the pain and what's the goal? Is the goal to reduce the amount of time your legal team is spending working on these and just speed up that process? Or is the goal, maybe if you have a lot of NDAs coming through, is the goal to try and reduce that turnaround time so that you're accelerating the pace that your business can work at? And I guess when customers implement LawVu, they instantly start to get that picture of what's happening. Where is your time going, and what is the blocker? Often we find that the blocker for NDAs or simple contracts that are coming through, sometimes it can be that it's just taking the legal team a long time to get to it because there's a backlog. Other times with more like complex agreements, they might not be getting the information they need at the outset to actually do that review. And so you can get a picture of what's happening and how you can really improve that, sorry. So our reporting sort of covers all of that, and that really completes the picture in terms of that post-execution management and continual optimization of the legal team.
Yeah. I mean, it's really striking to kind of see the demonstration, because each of your products, each of your platforms have kind of core strengths, core competencies, and the two really complement each other. I mean, they really do seem perfectly suited for an integration of this kind. What's been the kind of the reaction from customers? Are people using it now? What are you hearing from them?
Yeah, absolutely. So we only went live with this a little while ago, but in the background, we were actually already working together for quite a while, obviously building the integration, trying it out with existing customers, and the traction that we're seeing there is really good. We're basically already rolling this out globally, so across APAC, US, EMEA. We have around, I think, 10 at this moment, but probably by the time this video goes live, we're hoping that to be a little bit higher. Got already, 10 customers using it, using both tools, multiple industries, global operations. So we're really excited about that sort of early traction and that we've seen. And yeah, we're just keen to keep building on that.
I mean, I guess a question for LawVu is why go this route of partnering with another company when you arguably could have put some time and money into building something like this yourself?
We could have, but I mean, I think the depth and the breadth of the ClauseBuddy platform is just second to none. I mean, you saw and you saw Senna say, "Oh, I'm just going to show you a handful of the features that we have here today." The time involved in building that and the knowledge on their team, they just have such an in-depth knowledge of the process, and they've thought about everything. A lot of legal teams come to us and they're focused on, well, how can we use AI to improve contract review? But ClauseBuddy goes far beyond that. The AI is in every part of their platform, but there's also features. It's very value driven, right? There's features from finalizing and proofreading the document to running comparisons. So it's just that whole toolkit or toolbox. And we could have built that, but it would have taken a long time.
It's probably obvious, just sort of for the record here for anybody watching this, customer still needs to be a customer of both products. It's not somehow suddenly an integrated product from a purchasing point of view, more just from a functional and workflow point of view, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
correct.
Yeah. What else would you want people to know about this that we haven't talked about?
I guess the most important one is that if people are interested in trying this out, not just LawVu, not just ClauseBuddy, but really play around with the integration and just exploring how those two tools can work together. We do run joint trials. We have done that with quite a few of our joint customers already, and yeah, if people want to explore that, they're welcome to reach out to either me or Ali or anyone from our respective teams.
Great. Ali, anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
Nothing more to add from me. Thanks, Bob.
Well, thanks to both of you. This is really interesting, and it's great to see it visually. I've talked about it, I read about it, but seeing it it really helps you understand the value of this to users. So thanks for your time, and thanks for showing me this.